Let's take a look at Sony mirrorless cameras. If you're on the entry level, you're looking at Sony specifically, you want to get in there at the cheapest price possible, still have a good experience out of it. See what's available in the camera side and lens side. First off, on B&H, one of my affiliates, the Sony ZV-E10. Now, if you're going video specific, you could consider something like this, but if you're going for photography, I'd say avoid this option because it is very video focused. And that's the cheapest thing available, $700 without a lens, so you have to spend more to get a fully functional camera. And also, the main consideration right now with Sony is that they haven't updated the sensor in a really long time on these cameras. There is one new camera with a new sensor in it, but it's very expensive. So that is the $6,700, $1,400 MSRP USD for the camera without a lens. I think the main thing to do if you want a new, very recent camera with Sony APS-C at a lower price, I think you're just going to have to wait. Not a great situation, but that's just how it is at the moment, unless you want to go with this camera. It has a pretty good feature set, but that's not my main focus today. So we are pretty limited on low-cost options with current technology, but at the very least, these are decent, they're functional. The ZV-E10, again, that's video focused. We keep scrolling down here. The A6100, if you are going photography, this is at least a potential option for you. It is more photography focused with the lens for $700. That's probably going to be the most decent option in a new camera for you with the lens. Has that same 24 megapixel sensor that is on the older end of things, but it is certainly just fine. You're going to get nice photos out of it. But if you're doing video, consider at 4K, you might get more rolling shutter. You can research that if you want, but basically kind of like a jello-y thing if you're moving your camera around a lot or you have a very fast subject in your videos at 4K. That's going to happen on all the APS-C stuff, more so compared to the 6700, which is the newer sensor. We keep scrolling down the list. The 6400 has a few additional features compared to the 6100, but more so on the video side, I think. Obviously, that's not with the lens, so it's got a price premium compared to the 6100. However, I think the main way to go here at the moment is a used camera. So for example, another one of my affiliates, KH, sells used cameras. Most of them have that 6-month warranty, so you're not really risking anything in the situation because you're going to use it for 6 months. And if it has an issue, you can send it back to them. In this case, you have a lot more options and much cheaper prices. You can go really early for $200 or less. Now this one has the 24, might be different than the recent 24 megapixel sensor, but I'm not sure. One consideration of the NEX7, for example, the hot shoe connection is different. So you would need some type of adapter, but that's a relatively professional level body, at least for the Sony stuff of that era. You can see it has the dual dials on the top and a reasonable amount of controls and such. So at the very least, it's much, much cheaper than a new camera. You could consider it, but I would probably not go this option because you could step up a little bit and get a better experience. So for example, I'm currently recording this video with a A6000 using HDMI capture. It's very nice, very consistent. So if you want to go Sony at the moment, I think this is the best option for you, a used A6000 or a new one if you can find it cheap. But you can see an EX Plus with battery and charger for $400 has a decent amount of features, has a viewfinder, which isn't amazing, but it's there. And it has a good amount of controls and such. Standard tilt screen. It doesn't tilt forward, so if you're doing video, it's inconvenient. But the autofocus is pretty consistent in video situations. Again, you can get stuff like this. I'm using the standard kit lens with the camera that came with it. It's 16 to 50 OSS, 3.5 to 5.6 PZ. So you can zoom in like this. I have auto ISO on. Decent amount of lighting, and that definitely helps. Again, this is not the main use case I would use it for because the screen doesn't flip forward, but it works and it was cheap for me. If you can't find a good deal, this is probably going to be your route as a used one. And like I said, I think this is probably the best mix of performance versus price and availability. It's definitely been sold for a very long time, so you shouldn't have an issue finding this camera. Yep, that would be my main suggestion. For photography specifically. If you're doing video, don't go with A6000. It's limited to 1080p video. If you want 4K, you're gonna have to spend more money. And the A6000 can hold you over for more recent Sony releases. Eventually, I think we will see that new sensor in cheaper cameras. It's just gonna take a while, most likely with Sony. They haven't been very enthusiastic about releasing APS-C cameras. As we go down the line, you might even be able to find a full frame option used at a decent price. Original A7, we could just take a look for photography, might be decent. Obviously autofocus and other features won't be as advanced, but hey, if it works, it works. You can check it out. See the prices here, EX Plus for $539. Yeah, honestly, not bad. So if you want full frame, you would at the very least have some interesting options used. Sony E-mount is probably the best one for lens options. You're going to have a bunch of manufacturers and Sony as well, offering a multitude of different options. Let's take a look from the cheapest to most expensive. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we'll at least kind of relate it to the A6000 if you want to go on the cheaper end of things. Again, that used option. Yongnuo, this is third party, 50 f1.8, good portrait lens on APS-C. So you consider the field of view plus the crop factor to see if it works for you. Yongnuo, TT Artisan, I don't know like autofocus performance and things like that. Obviously, some of these are actually not available at the moment. Let's keep going down the line. 35 2.8 from Rokinon. Sony specific option, 50 1.8. I have used this lens. The build quality and the focus ring and stuff did not feel great, but at the very least, it's an official Sony option for $200 at the moment, or you could buy a used one. Personally, I would not get this lens, but at the very least, it's an option. Tamron 35 2.8, decent price considering the maximum aperture and focal length. 24.85. We're still getting a lot of third-party options here. Another 24, another 35. Here's an official Sony. I think this lens is pretty old at this point. 3.5 macro, so it has one-to-one magnification. If you want to do actual macro photography, this is going to be a nice option for you, considering that one-to-one. Price isn't bad either. Here's another older option, specifically Sony 16 2.8. It is pretty compact, which is nice, but I wouldn't expect a whole lot from optical performance. At the very least, you can consider it or buy a used one. Tamron 20 2.8, that'd be decent on an APS-C camera. Looks like it has good reviews. 12mm f2 Rokinon. Again, I don't know about autofocus performance and such. 4 out of 5 stars. Interesting mix of focal length and maximum aperture, and a decentish price, considering. More third-party options. Now we get the Viltrox 33 1.4. I have used that lens on EFM, the Canon system. Pretty good. I wouldn't say it was the most consistent or highest quality of the options I had at that focal length, but decent enough. Going to be cheaper than an official Sony lens. Could check that out. More Yongnuo. Here's a Sigma 30 1.4. I haven't used this one, but I like the trio of the Sigma lenses. This is the weakest link of the three, but it is the cheapest as well. And 30 1.4 is a good mix of focal length and aperture on an APS-C camera like the A6000. I would personally go with Sigma over all of the other third-party options. I like their lenses. So here's the lens I'm using for this setup right now, the 16 to 50, 3.5 to 5.6 OSS. So it has stabilization, and it's PZ, meaning it has a electronic focus ring. It's not the greatest lens, but it does work, at least in this context. Photography, not the best option. At the very least, you get 16 on the wide end, which is nice. So if you're trying to do vlogging or something, this can be an option for you, but I would not pay that price for it by any means. Even used, maybe $100. I don't think I'd pay $150. More Sony 50 1.8 with stabilization. Good reviews, it looks like. This is probably going to be a nice option for portrait work on the A6000 or A6100. Yeah, so you could check that out. It has the older look to the Sony lenses, so this one's probably been around for quite a while. And the thing to consider with Sony is that if you want to transition to full frame, you have a lot of those options as well to check out. Buying a APS-C specific lens like this one might not be the smartest move if you do want to eventually go to the larger format. It's all the same mount, which is nice. Here's a APS-C 55 to 210, so a good telephoto option, or one of the few with APS-C specific and lower price. Probably go used with this one. That's basically the standard of this type of lens. Here's a full frame option, third party, so Samyang 35 1.8. Potentially consider that. The reviews, at the very least, star rating looks good, and full frame capable, so in the future, you want to go full frame Sony, you can have this as a nice option. Another full frame lens, 50 1.8 portrait lens if you go APS-C at first. 56 1.4, this is APS-C specific. I have used this on the Canon system. Decent lens considering, and the same situation with the 23. So we scroll through the lens options here. There is a lot of third party on the cheaper end of things. Samyang, Rokinon, they have a good amount of options. Even Tokina is in here. Yangyo. It's another Sony 22.8 that looks like an older lens, maybe. It's going to take a while to get to the more recent, higher quality Sony specific lenses. Obviously $379. We have a ways to go on price. Let's keep going. There's a 24 1.8. That looks interesting on Sony. Here's a Sony full frame capable kit lens, 28 to 70. 28's not great on the A6000 or the A6100. Here's one lens to rule them all type of situation, 18 to 200. 18 isn't the best on APS-C, but it'll get you a decently wide field of view. Reviews, at least star rating, is not amazing. Tamron's a solid company, but this might be an older lens. If you're going to get an interchangeable lens camera, I don't see a huge benefit to this unless you're on a trip, don't want to be messing with it, or you're in a situation where there's a lot of water around or dust around and don't want to switch out lenses. That makes sense. I'd probably just go with different options that are more specialized and get you higher quality for each given focal length and such. The Sigma 16, this is APS-C specific. I have used this on a different mount. It was pretty solid. Optically, it was okay. Maybe not the best, maybe not perfect, but it was pretty consistent. Here's one of the more recent Sony releases. This is APS-C specific, 35 1.8. So if you want the highest quality, price honestly isn't bad considering it is first party, and optically and stuff, it should be pretty nice. With stabilization, so it's a good combination of features. Yeah, I'd say this is a nice starter option. If you don't really expect to go full frame at any point, check this one out. Another Sigma 56, I have used this in a different mount. Very nice lens. Here's another relatively recent option from Sony specifically, but this is full frame capable. So 28 f2. Consider the focal length and if it'll work for you if you do go like a 6000 type camera, but a pretty decent option considering the price and such. If you want an ultra wide first party lens, this is a more recent option, APS-C specific, 11 f 1.8. So nice combination of very wide and large aperture maximum. And the price honestly isn't bad considering. So I could talk for probably hours scrolling through this list of lenses. You can see there are a lot of third-party options, which is nice. There are also some Sony-specific first-party options that are a good combination of features and price, but you're going to have to really go down the line to get full-frame Sony-specific lenses. They're going to be relatively pricey. The main takeaway here is I'd go used at the moment with Sony APS-C, just to get the cheapest thing possible to get you started. And then with lenses, you could probably go used as well. But there are a solid amount of new options in APS-C and full frame. Anyways, hope you found this information helpful. Scott Photography Bonsai, thanks.